Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, special episode 1. So, what are special episodes? I realize that there are movies that I want to talk about, but I recognize that they're not werewolf movies, at least not according to the criteria that I originally set out. At the moment, everything on the special episode schedule has a major anthropomorphic wolf character, but I suppose that other films could find their way onto this list. This will be the 5th playlist I'm doing. So there'll be film buff, books, TV, games, and now specials. Although maybe specials and games will get blended together at some point. We're going to kick this series off by talking about Hoodwinked from 2005. I watched this on YouTube. I had seen this before. If you have a recommendation for something that is a werewolf adjacent film or something with werewolves that isn't a film, TV show, book, or game, please don't hesitate to drop a comment. The more details you can give me, particularly where to find it, the better. And that's what's going to populate this list. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. The film was directed by Corey Edwards, Todd Edwards, and Tony Leach. It was also written by Corey Edwards, Todd Edwards, and Tony Leach. Corey Edwards is best known for directing Hoodwinked and writing its 2011 sequel. He voiced the character Twitchy the Squirrel in this film. He has written multiple stories for VeggieTales and the American dub of Dougal. Yes, Todd Edwards is Corey's brother. He has a slightly shorter credits list, but still mostly in animation. While Todd Leach helped write this film, his bigger contribution is editing the film. The cast includes Anne Hathaway, the voice of Red, Glenn Close voiced Granny, Jim Belushi voiced the Woodsman, Patrick Warburton voiced the Wolf, David Ogden Stiers voiced Nicky Flippers, Exhibit voiced Chief Grizzly, and Andy Dick voiced Boingo. Anne Hathaway became a household name starring in Disney's The Princess Diaries and its sequel. She diversified with Brokeback Mountain, The Devil Wears Prada, and Rachel Getting Married, earning her first Academy Award nomination. She won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress as Fantine in Les Miserables. Other notable films include The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and Ocean's 8. Glenn Close established herself on Broadway in the 70s before transitioning to film in the 80s. She earned 3 consecutive Oscar nominations for The World According to Garp, The Big Chill, and The Natural, followed by nominations for Fatal Attraction, where she created the iconic villain Alex Forrest, and Dangerous Liaisons. Other notable roles include 101 Dalmatians and Damages. Despite 8 Oscar nominations, Close has never won, though she has received 3 Emmys, 3 Tonys, and 3 Golden Globes. Jim Belushi began at Chicago's Second City before joining Saturday Night Live from 1983 to 1985, following his brother John's death in 1982. He transitioned to film with About Last Night, Red Heat, and K-9, often playing likable, blue-collar everyman. His most prominent role came in the sitcom According to Jim, which ran 8 seasons from 2001 to 2009. Beyond acting, Belushi is an accomplished blues musician and cannabis farmer in Oregon, featured in the reality series Growing Belushi. He voiced a minor character in Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King. Patrick Warburton is one of Hollywood's most recognizable character actors, known for his distinctive baritone and deadpan delivery. He first gained attention on Seinfeld before starring in the cult favorite series of The Tick as the earnest blue-suited superhero. His prolific voice acting career includes 328 episodes and counting as Joe Swanson on Family Guy, Kronk in Disney's The Emperor's New Groove and sequels, Brock Sampson on The Venture Bros, and Ken in B-Movie. His signature voice has also made him a fixture in commercials, notably National Car Rental's long-running campaign. Film credits include Scream 3 and Ted. David Ogden Stiers is best known for playing pompous surgeon Major Charles Emerson Winchester III on MASH, a role that earned him 2 Emmy nominations. Beyond MASH, he had a prolific Disney voice career, including Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast, the Archdeacon in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Jumba in Lilo and Stitch. His film debut was in George Lucas's THX 1138, and he later appeared as Perry Mason's legal opponent in a series of TV movies, plus shows like The Dead Zone and films like The Accidental Tourist. Exhibit rose to prominence in the late 90s with his gravelly voice and aggressive delivery. His album Restless brought mainstream success, though 40 Days and 40 Nights first gained critical attention. He became widely known hosting MTV's Pimp My Ride, which is where I encountered him, and has appeared in films like 8 Mile and XXX State of the Union. He's collaborated with Eminem, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre, and remains active in music and entertainment. Andy Dick gained recognition on the Emmy-winning The Ben Stiller Show before playing eccentric Matthew Brock on News Radio. He appeared in films like Inspector Gadget, Dude, Where's My Car, and Old School, hosted The Andy Dick Show on MTV, and did extensive voice work. His career has unfortunately been overshadowed by substance abuse struggles and legal issues involving inappropriate behavior and sexual misconduct allegations. Despite the rough animation quality, I recommend this film for viewers who appreciate clever storytelling. It's a whip-smart premise with tons of clever details and jokes packed into the background. If you enjoy Shrek's fairy tale deconstructions or The Emperor's New Groove's irreverent humor, you're going to find something to enjoy here. This isn't Pixar-level polish, but it compensates with wit, creativity, and genuine heart. Keep expectations modest for an indie production, and you may be pleasantly surprised. Hoodwinked was a significant independent venture in animation, working completely independently of major studios. The film was produced on an $8 million budget, substantially less than the typical studio animated feature of the time, which commonly cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $80 million. To manage these constraints, the filmmakers used Maya software and outsourced animation work to the Philippines to keep production costs down. The result was a financially successful film that grossed $110 million worldwide, demonstrating that independent animation could achieve commercial viability without backing from major studios. So let's cover the synopsis. Hoodwinked reimagines Little Red Riding Hood as a film noir Rashomon-style mystery and begins with a confrontation at Granny's cottage. Red, the wolf, the woodsman, and Granny Puckett are all present when the police burst onto the scene. Chief Grizzly thinks he knows what's going on. Red was making illicit drug deliveries for Granny, who's a kingpin of crime. The wolf was going to eat them both, and the woodsman is a violent vigilante. The chief plans to toss all four in the slammer when gentleman detective Nicky Flippers arrives. The overarching crime is a series of recipe thefts, putting small sweet shops out of business. Each one of the four relates their version of that day's events. Red goes first. She's delivering goodies for Granny, but dreams of bigger things. Boingo the bunny exposits how many candy shops have gone out of business after the goodie bandits stole their recipes. Old Granny has entrusted Red with her priceless recipe book. Red decides it's safest to return that book to Granny. She has a run-in with the wolf, who's asking a lot of suspicious questions. She gives him the slip. While on a life-threatening mine car ride, she has a vision of Granny, who delivers life-saving advice. She gets to Granny's house, which gets us to the climax. Next up is the wolf, who is an investigative journalist looking into the Goody Bandit story for the last 6 months. He checks with sources, gathering details on Red and Granny. His questions for Red were him trying to get to the truth. Boingo directs the wolf to Granny's house. He breaks in to find the house empty. He disguises himself as Granny to try and get even more information out of Red. Wolf's photographer has pictures that back up his story. Then they bring in the woodsman, Kirk, who's really a struggling actor selling schnitzel for his day job. His schnitzel truck is robbed. Boingo commiserates with him. We find out he only arrived at Granny's house as a consequence of a tree-felling accident. Which finally brings us to Granny, who is an undercover extreme athlete and adrenaline junkie. Boingo gets her autograph at an X Games skiing event. She fights off some European hitmen. She appeared to Red while she was parasailing. She ended up tying herself up with her parachute. Red does not take this deception from her grandma well. We learn Red comes from a long line of thrill-seeking bakers. Nicky Flippers finally solves the case. The real villain is Boingo the bunny, who's been stealing recipes from various goodie shops around the forest with the intent to create a candy and baked goods empire. Granny, the wolf, and Kirk team up to rescue Red. With her help, they stop Boingo and his Eurotrash henchmen and save the day. In the end, Nicky recruits Granny, Red, and the wolf as part of the clandestine Happily Ever After agency as undercover spies and investigators. The end. Hoodwinked deserves credit for its sophisticated storytelling approach. The Rashomon structure, where the same events are retold from different perspectives, is rarely attempted in family animation. Each retelling reveals new information and recontextualizes previous scenes, creating genuine mystery and engagement, and letting jokes build across each retelling. The script trusts its young audience to follow complex narrative techniques typically reserved for adult films. So let's talk about the wolf as the hunter of truth. In Western folklore, the wolf is always the villain, usually, almost always. From Red Riding Hood to the Three Little Pigs, the wolf represents danger, something that needs to be defeated, outsmarted, and destroyed. Hoodwinked does something different. The wolf doesn't prey on innocence. He's hunting for the truth. And that simple reversal reveals something important, how stories shape what we see, and how the pursuit of truth can actually be a predatory instinct redirected towards justice. Now, we've inherited centuries of stories that code the wolf as a threat. The wolf is the deceiver. He's chaos, hunger that can't be satisfied. In Red Riding Hood, he's a mimic, a shapeshifter capable of disguising himself as safety. In The Three Little Pigs, he's the destructive force that tests our defenses. These stories aren't just entertainment, they're cultural training, teaching each of us to see the wolf and immediately suspect it. This archetypal baggage runs so deep that we forget it's constructed sometimes. When a wolf appears in a story, we arrive with centuries of prejudice already loaded up. Guilty before evidence. This is exactly where Hoodwinked starts, seeming to confirm everything that we expect before systematically dismantling it. The film introduces the wolf as the obvious suspect, but as it unfolds, we discover that he's not the perpetrator. In fact, he's the investigator, and his methods are nothing like what you'd expect from a villain. He pursues evidence methodically. He questions witnesses rigorously. He challenges authority, specifically the police chief, when authority proves lazy or compromised. Where we expected impulse and malice, we find discipline and skepticism. The wolf doesn't accept comfortable answers. He's hunting for the actual bedrock truth. And here's where the metaphor gets clever. Hunting and investigating require almost identical skill sets: instinct, patience, the ability to track subtle signs, the relentless capacity to pursue despite obstacles, and knowing when you need to obfuscate your identity to gain access. The wolf does not abandon his predatory nature when he becomes an investigator. He just redirects it. His instinct to track becomes the ability to follow evidence. His patience for stalking prey becomes persistence in questioning. His hunting intelligence becomes his detective intelligence. This matters because it suggests that truth-seeking isn't gentle or passive. It's not exactly violent, but the aggressive refusal to accept the simple answers, it tracks lies through layers of misdirection. It pursues justice with the same single-minded focus that a predator brings to survival. The wolf is the perfect metaphor for an investigator because he combines instinct, intellect, aggression, and discipline. Let's take a second to consider the fictional investigator Fletch, a character who's appeared across novels and film adaptations, as someone willing to pursue truth against all social pressure and convenient narratives. Like the wolf, Fletch succeeds not by accepting what society has already decided is the truth, but by interrogating it. Also, like the wolf, Fletch isn't always a nice guy. Both know people are going to be hurt as the truth is uncovered. The parallel is instructive. Both characters embody investigators who hunt through layers of expectation and misdirection to find what's actually true, and they don't care who's hurt or not. They just want the truth to come out. The actual villain, Boingo the Bunny, perfectly understands how powerful stories are. He manipulates the wolf as predator narrative with the cultural expectation. Society already believes the wolf is guilty, so the archetype predisposes suspicion. The wolf becomes a convenient scapegoat, the perfect distraction, precisely because we've been trained by centuries of storytelling to suspect him. The real guilty party hides in plain sight, sheltered by misdirection and our inherited prejudice. This reveals something crucial. Truth-seeking requires more than just collecting evidence. It requires interrogating the stories that shape what we're prepared to believe in the first place. By the film's end, the wolf doesn't become the moral center of the story. By the film's end, the wolf has become the moral center of the story. Not because he's more virtuous, but because he embodies what honest investigation actually looks like. He pursues truth without concern for comfort, his or anyone else's. He challenges inadequate authority. He's willing to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when it contradicts his own assumptions or his community's assumptions. His predatory nature is an asset, not through malice, but through purpose. He hunts for the truth with the same focus and intelligence that a predator brings to getting its next meal. Except what motivates him isn't survival, it's justice. This transformation reveals Hoodwinked's deepest insight. The qualities that make something dangerous can become the qualities that make it just. The wolf succeeds not by being gentle or passive, but by willing to hunt, to pursue, and to refuse to stop until the actual truth emerges. In a world where the guilty hide behind inherited narratives, the most subversive act is hunting relentlessly for what's really true. And that brings us to the second theme I want to talk about, the limits of lived perspective. What is the truth? Right? We've just said he's hunting for the truth. That sounds a little like a stoned freshman question, but we've wrestled with it forever. Most of us treat the truth like car keys. You either have it or you don't. But what if the truth isn't something you find alone? What if it only emerges when different people pool their incomplete understandings? Here's my argument. No individual ever has the full picture. Real truth shows up when multiple observers combine what they've seen. I'll demonstrate this using two wildly different films that make the same point. Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon from 1950s and Hoodwinked, which is clearly based on Rashomon. Rashomon is cinema's most famous exploration of perception and truth. A crime happens in the forest. We hear four versions of it. The bandit, the woman, the husband, speaking through a medium because he's dead, and a woodcutter who watched. Every version contradicts the others. Everyone makes themselves look good. The brilliant thing? Kurosawa never tells us which version is true, or if any are. The discomfort is the point. Individual perspectives aren't just limited. It's actively distorted by desire, shame, fear, and personal self-interest. Nobody can see events without filtering them through their own psychological needs. But the film doesn't end in nihilism. The woodcutter and the priest, listening to these contradictory stories, realize that incompleteness is exactly what makes working together necessary. The truth doesn't come from finding the right perspective. It comes from understanding how all perspectives are both partial and revealing. Each warped account contains real nuggets of information. Only by holding all of these stories at once can you get close to the truth. Now, Hoodwinked does take slightly a different angle. Instead of emphasizing the unreliability of its sources, it emphasizes the incompleteness. The same structure. We see Red's journey through the forest from four perspectives: Red's, the wolf's, the woodsman's, and Granny's. Unlike Rashomon, we do get an answer here. Boingo is the bad guy. But Nicky Flippers doesn't solve this alone. He needs everyone's perspective. Each new viewpoint doesn't just add new information, although it does do that. It reorganizes what everyone else's information means. Both films point towards something fundamental. Figuring things out is an inherently social activity. Look at science. A physicist working alone can develop brilliant theories, but that theory only becomes knowledge when other physicists review it, test it, challenge it, and ultimately accept it. Individual genius is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The legal system gets this too. One witness, no matter how sincere, rarely settles anything. Justice requires gathering multiple accounts, cross-examining witnesses, and introducing corroborating evidence. The law institutionalized the idea that the truth emerges through competing and synthesizing perspectives, not just finding the one right person and accepting their story. So, why are individual perspectives so limited? First, the obvious. Nobody can be everywhere at once, but there's a trickier psychological dimension to it. None of us are neutral observers. We interpret through our own desires, fears, and self-image. We unconsciously edit memories to preserve self-respect. We emphasize details that support our narrative and downplay any contradiction. This isn't exactly dishonesty. It's just how human consciousness works. Collaboration addresses this not by eliminating bias, that's impossible, but by distributing bias. When multiple biased observers contribute, their biases check and balance each other. The bandit's narcissism gets countered by the woman's fear. The husband's shame-driven narrative gets contradicted by what others witness. The distortions create friction that produce a more accurate approximation of what actually happened. Same in Hoodwinked. Red emphasizes certain details while missing others. The wolf, as the suspected outsider, focuses on different evidence entirely. The woodsman provides an innocent observation impossible for those directly involved. Granny reveals truths that perpetuators and witnesses might miss. Together, these multiple distorted perspectives converge on the truth. Now, both films are ultimately teaching humility. Genuine truth-seeking requires acknowledging how incomplete your own perspective is, how incomplete my own perspective is. That isn't skepticism. It's recognizing that what one person can know is always partial, always limited by position, interest, and perception. Your lived truth is always incomplete. This doesn't mean giving up on the truth. It means pursuing truth collaboratively. It means creating institutions that integrate diverse perspectives. This isn't second best. It's the actual structure of how humans understand the world. Rashomon and Hoodwinked, despite their vastly different styles, both demonstrate this principle. Finally, we're going to talk about appearances. Hoodwinked opens with the line, "Don't judge a book by its cover," a simple phrase that signals the film's central interest in how surface appearances can and do mislead. The movie populates itself with instantly recognizable fairy tale characters, then contradicts our every expectation. Red isn't helpless prey, but she's a resourceful agent. The wolf isn't a predatory threat, but a principled investigator. The woodsman isn't a noble protector, but a performer. Granny isn't a sweet victim, but a cunning entrepreneur. Even Boingo appears as an innocent bunny before being revealed as a calculated villain. By subverting the familiar patterns, the film demonstrates that first impressions often mislead, and understanding requires looking past what we've been trained to see. I know I'm kind of saying this a lot. To appreciate the film's accomplishments, we need to recognize that the power archetypes hold over our perception. Archetypes are cultural patterns so deeply embedded that they shape how we interpret reality itself. The fairy tale tradition created some of Western culture's most powerful archetypes. The innocent maiden requires rescue, the malevolent predatory wolf, the heroic protective woodsman, and the domestic grandmother. These aren't just character descriptions, they're interpretive filters that determine what we're prepared to see. A really good other example of this is the graphic novel series Fables. We don't consciously decide Red Riding Hood is helpless. The archetype shapes our perception before we think about it. We already explored the wolf in detail, so let's move on to the other major characters. Traditional Red Riding Hood is naive. She's easily deceived and ultimately devoured or rescued. She's a fundamentally passive character. Hoodwinked Red demonstrates agency and strategic thinking from her first appearance. In the end, no one rescues her. She escapes on her own. Her innocent appearance masks competence, showing that the archetypal role society assigns may bear little relationship to actual capability. Now, the woodsman traditionally embodies order and strength, the rescuer arriving at the crucial moment. Hoodwinked reveals him to be aesthetically rather than genuinely heroic, an actor playing a role. He looks like a hero, but he isn't. His heroism is to be witnessed rather than representing genuine commitment. The film exposes how capability's appearance can disguise ineptitude. Now, Granny normally represents domesticity, frailty, and aged wisdom. Hoodwinked reveals her as athletic, entrepreneurial, operating a business empire with intelligence and ambition. Her apparent vulnerability is a strategic performance. The archetype is an advantage rather than a constraint. By allowing others to make archetypal assumptions about her, she operates with more freedom. Most chillingly, Boingo's bunny appearance signals pure harmlessness. Bunnies represent gentleness and timidity. This radical disconnect between innocuous exterior and calculated malevolence represents the film's most direct statements about judging by appearances. The implicit warning here, the most dangerous threats often appear least threatening. The film's subversions connect to how children develop moral reasoning. Young children judge by appearance and outcome. If something looks bad, then it is bad. More sophisticated reasoning understands that appearances deceive, intentions do matter, and context shapes meaning. Each character subversion requires viewers to revise their moral assessment, training them to question appearance-based judgments and seek evidence before making determinations. This matters in contemporary society where visual appearance carries enormous communicative power. Social media prioritizes images and first impressions. Advertising manipulates appearances. Political messaging uses visual symbolism. Learning to question appearance-based judgments is crucial critical literacy. The film also illuminates how prejudice functions. Prejudices are basically archetypal thinking applied to real people, creating stereotypes. We carry categories around about what group members are like, and these categories shape perception, so confirming evidence is noticed while contradicting evidence is ignored. And this applies to race, it applies to political party, it applies to everything. The wolf is suspected not because of evidence, but because wolf has been coded as dangerous. By making archetypal thinking literal and visible, the film reveals prejudice's mechanics, showing how archetypes function as interpretive filters. For viewers confronting real-world prejudice, it offers an implicit argument. The categories through which we judge people are constructed by somebody, and they're unreliable guides to actual character or capability. This focus on appearance versus reality feels particularly relevant now. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube create incentives for curating appearance. Influencers present carefully constructed versions of themselves. Appearance has become increasingly sophisticated and increasingly calculated. AI can create sophisticated fakes, and in this environment, questioning appearance is genuinely important. Hoodwinked teaches the lesson that genuine understanding requires looking beyond surfaces. Archetypal thinking often misleads, and justice requires skeptical attention to evidence rather than rapid judgment based on appearance. For children, this movie trains them, or helps train them, to question inherited categories and seek evidence before judging. For adults, it reminds us that sophisticated deception works precisely by leveraging those easy archetypal expectations. The film opens with a simple proverb and concludes by demonstrating why this advice is essential. In a world of appearances, truth and justice require looking beyond the surface. Hoodwinked teaches this not through sermonizing, but through narrative surprise, making wisdom and skepticism not burdensome, but delightful. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. When I do my next special, it'll probably be to discuss Hoodwinked 2, Hood versus Evil from 2011. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.